Okay, we are recording. Shalom and welcome to Covenant Calendar Club. We're so glad that you are here, and we pray that you'll be richly blessed by the word of Yahuwah as it's expressed out of the mouth of our teachers concerning this blood-ratified covenant calendar. And we would like to just give you a warm shout. We're going to unmute our mics. Welcome you. Shalom. Hello.
Shalom, everyone.
Welcome.
Shalom.
Everyone. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom, shalom.
Shalom. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and turn the screen over to Charlene, who's going to be our teacher this evening. Thank you, Charlene, and thank you, Abba, for what we're about to receive.
I just want to welcome everybody tonight, and as we get started on this study for the honor of lepers, just want to let you know that we are going to see some extraordinary things tonight with this story on the honor of lepers. It's found in 2 chapters of 2 Kings, chapter 6 and 7. And one of the things that the lepers said is, why are we going to sit here until we die? We just can't be doing this. So I just hope you have fun with this study. Lots of little things that we can compare some of ourselves to this experience that the lepers had. But we want to start out first with some words of wisdom. Yahuwah is presenting to the minds of many divinely appointed precious gems of truth that are appropriate for our time. Yahuwah has rescued these truths from the companionship of error, and he has placed them in their proper framework. And when these truths are given their rightful position in Yahuwah's great plan, when they are presented intelligently and earnestly with reverential awe by Yahusha's servants, many will be conscientiously believing because of the weight of evidence. And that's the weight of evidence from the scriptures, by the way. And they won't have to wait for every supposed difficulty, which may suggest itself to their minds. They don't need to have those all removed first. And I'm getting constant requests from quite a few people that are asking calendar questions, and I think Tim is too. We would like to see the historical documentation. And what I'm telling people is that let's first find the documentation from the scriptures. And when we know that, then we can remove the historical pieces that are not quite in line with Torah. Some counsel from Colossians 1, along with Paul, this should be our prayer for those that are searching for Yahusha's end-time truths, and we do have some new people here tonight. We welcome them, and anybody new that's watching this for the first time. In verse 9 it says, "For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you might walk worthy of the Master unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of Yahuwah, giving thanks unto the Father, which hath made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son." So with that, we're just going to get started and ask that Becky would come on board with us to help us with a few slides as we get started in our lesson on the lepers.
Thank you, Charlene. Hi, everybody. Well, let's look at a lesson from the lepers. This is a very interesting scriptural account about some lepers that were definitely not part of society. However, at the end of the story, everyone is grateful for these 4 beggarly lepers, and you will too. The details in this story reveal the new day begins with dawn, not sunset the day before. We might feel lepers have nothing to contribute to society or to our society, and that they're not educated or refined in culture. And certainly they don't seem to care for others because they're so needy themselves. But as we begin our search, there may be some questions. Would you be wondering how these 4 rejected lepers of society could possibly understand Yahuwah's new 24-hour cycle begins and when it begins? 2, do they have the knowledge that would contribute to our understanding? And 3, will we choose to learn something from the lepers? 4, or will we learn something we weren't expecting to learn? We should know by now, after a thorough examination of Yahuwah's calendar for day start, month start, and year start, there should be a good understanding that his covenant of the day begins with light in the morning, the moment when night is over and the new day enters. With over 35 Bible testimonies, along with the strongest witness that's in the ministry of Yahushua, there shouldn't be any reason or need to examine yet another day study. However, this leper study has a special purpose for those aligning with the covenant calendar. The experience of the lepers is one that many of us will go through these last and end times. The lepers have something to teach us.
Yes, they absolutely do have something to teach us, and we're just going to do a little bit of an introduction to this before we get started reading all of the verses. I'll do this slide, and then Becky will join us on slide number 8. And the story does begin in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 24 to 33. It's about the land of Samaria. They were experiencing severe difficulties and problems. There was a very, very severe drought that had inflicted the people. They didn't know what to do next. And then Ben-Hadad of Syria moved in with his army, and he laid siege upon the city of Samaria. Food was at a premium, to say the least. We're going to find out about that as we read the verses. And the extreme hunger was so severe that people were beginning to eat their own children. We'll read about that as well. Samaria's King Jehoram, who happened to be the son of King Ahab, was blaming everything on Elisha. And by the way, because he was a son of King Ahab, who was a very wicked king, it could be that King Jehoram was starting his day at a different time than what the Torah teaches. So we're going to find out about that tonight. And his intent was to plan and act upon a scheme to kill Elisha and to get rid of him, because he thought Elisha was causing all the problems. So Becky's going to go ahead and read our next slide. If she has her mic open.
Sorry about that. So we're going to be looking at 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 24 through 29. And this is around approximately 894 BC. And it came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his hosts and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they sieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 or 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. And as the king of Israel, King Jehoram, was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If Yahweh does not help thee, whence shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor, or out of the winepress? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her the next day, Give thy son, so we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. Gross.
I just want to make note there that this is 894, so this is kind of late. It's about 894, about 200 years before Hezekiah's sundial, just to give you a reference there. Okay, we have our king coming in to read.
And it came to pass, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. And he said, Yahuwah, do so and more also to me, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, shall not stand on him this day. Question, which day? a day that ends at sunset, or a day that ends with the break of daylight?
Mm-hmm. And Elisheba is going to read our slides that have to do with Elisha.
2 Kings 6:32 to 33. Elisha has no fear. But Elisha sat in his house on that day, and the elders sat with him. And the king sent a man from before him. But ere the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, See ye how this son of a murderer hath sent to take away mine head this day? Look, when the messenger cometh, shut the door and hold him fast at the door. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? And while he yet talked with them, behold, the messenger of the king came down unto him this day, and he said, Behold, this evil is of Yahuwah. Why should I wait for Yahuwah any longer? 2 Kings 7:1. What was Elisha's response? And Elisha said, Hear the word of Yahuwah. Thus saith Yahuwah, tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria. Then a Lord on whose hand the king leaned answered the man of Yahuwah and said, Behold, if Yahuwah would make windows in heaven, might this thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. Question: Is King Jehoram's referral to this day the same as Elisha's referral to his tomorrow?
And that's a good question. And we're going to find out that the tomorrow is actually going to be about 24 hours past the point of what's happening right here. But we should just go ahead and take a look at the definition for tomorrow. In Hebrew, it's makar, and the definitions from Strong's, which is H4279, say this: tomorrow, in the time to come, in the future, or tomorrow as the day following the present day, or in the future time. And in this study, we're going to seek to answer these questions. When is the juncture for the next cycle exchange? And does the cycle exchange arrive at sunset, as most Christian Sabbath keepers profess that it does, and what we used to do a long time ago? And what about a cycle exchange at midnight, or how about noon, or even sunrise? Or will dawn, the dawn twilight, prove to be the scriptural point of the cycle exchange in this testimony? So those are the questions that we want to look at as we go through this study. So Vivian's going to help us with some of the leper slides.
Okay. 2 Kings 7, 3 to 5. The lepers have a plan. 3. And there were 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate. And they said one to another, Why sit we here until we die? If we say, we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we sit still here, we die also. Now, therefore, come, and let us fall unto the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall be alive. And if they kill us, we shall but die. And they arose up in the twilight to go into the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, Behold, there was no man there. Wow.
Thank you very much, Vivian. So twilight's a really important word here in this particular study. And the question is, which twilight is this? Did they raise up in the dusk twilight, or was it the morning, the dawn twilight? Well, let's look at the definitions of twilight with Becky here for a couple of slides.
Okay, we're going to look at the Strong's H5399, Neshef, from the OT 5398, properly a breeze, i.e. by implication, dusk, when the evening breeze prevails. In the King James Version, we have dark, number 2, dawning of the day, morning, night, twilight. When we look at the Strong's H5398 with Neshaf, we have a primitive root, to blow, i.e. blow up fresh as the wind, and again in the King James Version, blow. The etymological dictionary of the Hebrew language, twilight, Neshef, excuse me, we have the first definition, to blow fiercely. The second definition, to become dark. The third definition, evening twilight, evening. Morning twilight properly denotes the time of the evening breezes. See Genesis 3:8, when Yahuwah walked with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And then our fourth definition is blowing. So we have quite a bit for twilight than just an evening in these definitions. Looking into the interlinear scripture analyzer, this translates the word as the gloaming. Now, when we go to the Webster's Encyclopedia Dictionary, it claims the word gloaming is of a Scottish origin for fall of the evening, twilight, evening period. These four definitions designate twilight first as evening and second as dawn. Will this hold true in this study? 2 Kings chapter 7, verses 6 and 7. The Syrians flee. And why did the Syrians flee in such a terrified haste? Verse 6 says, for Yahuwah had made the host of the Syrians to hear a great noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said to one another, lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. So we see that Yahuwah had created a miracle that terrified the Syrians to the bone. They fled with only the clothes on their back. In verse 7, wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight and left their tents and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. So which twilight? According to the definitions, this can be an evening or a morning twilight. So we're going to look at some confirmation that follows in verse 12.
Yes, we will. And we're just going to have Vivian come in and do some leper slides for us.
2 Kings 7, verse 8. Miracles and surprises for the lepers. Upon entering the camp, the hungry lepers began feasting on all the food and stashing valuable items. However, it is very important to note the honorable thoughts of the lepers. Verse 8, and when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went into one tent and did eat and drink and carried thence silver and gold raiment and went and hid it, and came again and entered into another tent and carried thence also and went and hid it. Second Kings 7:9. Lepers avoid the consequences. 9. Then they said one to another, we do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief, punishment, will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell the king's household. Does it appear the leper's day ended with morning light? I think so.
Yeah, maybe.
2 Kings 7:10. Lepers share the good news. So they came and called unto the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, we came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither voice of a man, but horses tied and asses tied, and their tents as they were.
Mhm.
2 Kings 7:11-12, news for King Jehoram. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose in the night and said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we be hungry, therefore are they gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, when they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive and get into the city. Arose in the night. This is after the former evening twilight. King Joram investigates. And one of his servants answered and said, let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are as all the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, I say, they are even as all the multitudes of the Israelites that are consumed. And let us send and see. Well, they took therefore 2 chariot horses, and the king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, go and see. And they went after them unto Jordan, and lo, all the way was full of garments and vessels, which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. The siege is over, and the people went out and spoiled the tents of the Syrians. So as a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of Yahuwah. And the king appointed the Lord, on whose hand he leaned, to have the charge of the gate. And the people trod upon him in the gate, and he died, as the man of Yahuwah has said, who spake when the king came down to him.
Okay, we will hear from Elisha's portion now on his prophecy being fulfilled. Elisheba.
2 Kings chapter 7, verses 18 to 20. Elisha's prophecy fulfilled. Verse 18. And it came to pass, as the man of Yahuwah had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And the Lord that answered the man of Yahuwah and said, now behold, if Yahuwah should make windows in heaven, might such a thing be? And he said, behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. And so it fell out unto him, for the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died.
So the question now is everybody's day on the same page? Is King Jehoram's day on the same day as Elisha's day? And is that on the same day as the leper's day? That's what we want to find out. So we'll go back to the king and see if we can figure out any of these clues.
King Jehoram's day. King Jehoram was the son of the very wicked King Ahab of the northern tribes of Israel. Most of the time, the king of Israel followed the pagan ways of worship and led the people to practice these wicked ways. Who knows whether King Jehoram was honoring Yahuwah's covenant of the day at this time? Or will the details in this account reveal the truth about the matter? When is King Jehoram's day? The terminology around the event of King Jehoram is given as this day. And as the king of Israel, King Jehoram was passing by upon the wall. Then he said, Yahuwah, do so and more also to me, if the head of Elisha the son of Shaphat shall stand on him this day. According to the context, this event is taking place during the day season hours, not the evening or night season. Jehoram's threat to Elisha is to be carried out on this day. Which day is this day? A day that ends at sunset, or a day that ends with the break of daylight. Let's examine the two choices. When does King Jehoram's day begin? Night season or day season? Okay, at sunset or next sunset, or at dawn to the next dawn. Depending on when King Jehoram's day begins, he only has so much time to carry out his death threat against Elisha before his day ends. Now, with a sunset day, the threat given during the day season will be in less than 12 hours. At dawn, okay, when a dawn day, the threat given during the day season can extend nearly 24 hours.
So this is important to notice that if his day starts with the sunset, okay, we're already into the day season here, just about at the end of the 24-hour period. That means that there isn't too many more hours left in this particular 24-hour cycle. I would say maybe 9 hours are left until the sunset would come and change the day to the next day if the king is using a sunset day. But if he starts his day in the morning at dawn, and let's just say we've got 3 hours into our day season, then he's probably got quite a bit more time until we get to the next morning. It's certainly more than 9 hours, probably closer to about 15 hours. But anyway, Elisha has something to say about this too.
When is Elisha's day? The terminology around the events of Elisha is given as tomorrow. 2 Kings 6:32 and 33. But Elisha sat in his house on that same day of the king's proclamation. And the elders sat with him, and he said to the elders, See ye how this son of a murderer hath sent to take away mine head this day? Look, when the messenger cometh, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. And while Elisha, yet talked with them, behold, the messenger came down unto him this day. And 2 Kings 7:1, and Elisha said, Hear the word of Yahuwah. Thus saith Yahuwah, tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria. Prophet Elisha's day. The prophet Elisha would have kept and taught Yahuwah's covenant laws, including the laws of Moses and the covenant of the day. See Jeremiah 33:20 to 26. He would have understood that the day begins with morning, boker, or the first light that breaks the day.
Okay, this is a chart for Elisha's day, and I'm just going to see if Elisheba can work through this.
All right. From the top, it says, when did Elisha's day begin? And on this chart, we're going from dawn to sunset to dawn as the first day season, and then after sunset is the first night season, and after dawn is the second day season. During the first day season, King Jehoram threatens Elisha's life before the day is over. 2 Kings 6:31. Now we have from that time of the first day season through the night season, Elisha is not worried as the day is not over until the morning light. 1 Kings 7:1. Then we have this little guy sitting on a check, if people don't have the view. We have an arrow going from the first day season through the second to where it begins the second day season after dawn. And there is a forward progressive movement of the verses and events. Then, where is tomorrow for Elisha? In the second day season, underneath is box number 3. It says Elisha's prophecy fulfilled on the tomorrow. About the same time on the next day from King Jehoram's original threat. 2 Kings 7:18. We have the arrow again and the forward progressive movement of the verses and events. I like what you did here, Charlene. Thank you.
So, yes, so what we're looking for, and we're going to have more review for this coming up, is that these verses are going in order with the events. We were in chapter 6, verse 31. Then we moved to chapter 7, verse 1. And this is chapter 7, verse 18. We skipped a whole bunch in here, but it's just to show that we're going forward with the events and with the verses as well. So do you think Elisha might have the last word on when the day begins? Or is it going to be the lepers? We'll wait and see. Okay, Vivian is going to come in and help us with a little bit more work on the lepers.
Okay, the lepers' day. The lepers were from Samaria, ruled by King Jehoram. We do not know the length of the time they were living outside that city gate. If the people of Samaria were following King Jehoram's ways, including how he honored the day start, is it possible the lepers were following the same pattern? Or were the lepers participating an alternate day start? Or does it even matter? The lepers will have the clues to solve this whole mystery. Okay, when is the lepers' day? The terminology around the events of the lepers is given as twilight and morning light. 2 Kings 7:5. And they, the lepers, rose up in the twilight to go to the camp. 2 Kings 7:7. Wherefore they, Syrians, arose and fled in the twilight. They fled for their life. 2 Kings 7:8. And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp after the evening twilight, they found the camp deserted. Now 2 Kings 7:9, they said one to another, we do not well. This day is the day of good tidings. If we tarry until the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. There is more information on the scriptures for lepers than for the kings and Elijah.
Thank you very much, Vivian. And that's true in this particular story. There is a lot more information with the lepers. But right now, we're going to start into some of the new parts of this study. And the next slide is going to chart the major timed events of the king, Elisha, and the lepers. Only the major. I'm not putting everything in or else we'd be here all night. But anyway, this calendar testimony must demonstrate the forward progressive movement of two things. The first thing is it has to demonstrate a forward progressive movement of the verses. Beginning in 1 Kings 6:31, we're going to move to chapter 7, verse 5, then verses 8 to 10, all going in order. Chapter 7, verses 12 to 15, all in order. And then we'll finish with chapter 7, verses 16 and 18. That's the first thing that we're looking for, all a forward progressive movement. But we're also looking for a forward progressive movement of the events that are going to transpire in these next 24 hours. And this is going to work from day 1 of the light season. Then we have to travel through the twilight or the dusk, and then we will go through the night of that day 1 on to tomorrow of day 2, which is going to be about the same time as it was in day 1, approximately 24 hours later. Okay, so hang on to your seats because this is going to be a lot. I'll try to go slow. We're looking at forward progressive movement. And remember, we want all of the verses and the events moving forward in a very orderly manner because we do not have the right to mix up the verses and change the events the way we want them to be. So there's your dawn, and you have your sunset, and then another dawn, and in this particular chart, this is where tomorrow is going to begin here. So there's your 24-hour day for your dawn. Okay, the next thing that happens in this story is that it travels on into tomorrow to about this far, to about 24 hours past where the story started. In box number 1, King Jehoram, he threatens Elisha's life before the day is over. We don't know what time it was. I'm just picking a time, maybe the 3rd hour of the day or 9 o'clock Roman time, something like that. Could have been a little bit earlier. But anyway, he's got a threat on Elijah's life. We are skipping a couple of events and moving right into the lepers. They rose up at the Erev twilight or the dusk twilight. That happens after sunset. The next thing is we are told that the Syrians also fled at twilight, probably about the same time that the lepers made their decision that they're going to go into the camp of the Syrians and check things out. But of course, they would have had to travel a little bit, and so these two events are happening side by side. In box number 4, we find the lepers are entering the Syrian camp, but this is after twilight. It's going to be into the dark part of the night. You find that in 2 Kings 7, verse 8, and they find it's deserted. And they're there feasting on the food and the treasures, the silver and the gold, and all the clothing, that stashing it away. And then they remember that their good tidings have to be shared with those in the city. But it's very interesting that the scripture account says in verse 9, they needed to do this before the morning light. And they said, if we don't do this, we're going to come into some mischief or punishment. So we better get going and share these good tidings before the morning light. That's very interesting. So they don't have a lot of time left. They only have from where they are up until the morning light. Okay, so definitely it appears that dawn is the cycle exchange for the lepers in this particular account. As we move up to box number 5, we find that the lepers have gone back to Samaria, and they find the porter of the city, and it's during the night, and they share this good news. We are now in verse 10. And of course, the porters go and they wake up the king. I wonder how happy he was about that. But the account tells us in verses 12 to 15 that King Jehoram arose in the night to investigate the report. This is happening after the twilight. Okay, we're in the darkness of night. And he finds that their report is true. And this happens to be between two twilights, this dusk twilight and the dawn twilight. This is when the king arose. Now, did his day, the king's day, end over here at the past sunset, or is it going to end with the morning light? Now, we haven't charted this because there was no information in the scriptures to say that Elisha had been beheaded or was no longer with us. It didn't say anything, so Elisha must still be around. In box number 7, we are now past the dawn twilight, and we're into the day. The city people obviously have heard about this news, and they leave the city to go spoil the Syrian camp. You find that in 2 Kings 7, verse 16. And the keeper of the gate is trampled as they come and they go, exactly like Elisha said. In box number 8, we find that Elisha's prophecy is fulfilled, exactly like he said, on the tomorrow. He said it would be about the same time on the next day. So the king made his announcement approximately here, approximately 24 hours later, about the same time on the next day, King Jehoram's threat. He was got out of it, didn't he? That is in verse 18 of chapter 7. But you know, the question still comes up. Everybody wants to know if King Jehoram was using a sunset day commencement, because his father was King Ahab, who was a really wicked king. And the next chart is going to attempt to demonstrate the forward progressive movement according to a sunset day chart. And I'm saying attempt because that's all it is. It gets really tricky. Once you understand that Yah's days begin in the morning, trying to put these events into a sunset day is really tricky. So did the king honor a sunset day or not? I'm just going to go slow on this chart. We'll start with these boxes. Box number 1, some of its review. We have our day starting at sunset here. The sunset begins the new day. There's dawn, but the sunset day goes on all the way up to the next sunset, where it begins the next day, okay? So in box number 1, it was during the day season that King Jehoram threatened Elisha that he was going to lose his head before the day was over. So if it's during the day season, right here, okay, King Jehoram started his sunset day. We're wondering if he did, but if it's a sunset day, it was started way over here at sunset. Now we've traveled at least 15 hours, you would have to say, into this 24-hour cycle, okay? Box number 2. This means that Elisha has only about 9 hours to live here before this 24-hour day ends at sunset, if it is actually beginning at sunset. It's not very much time. In box number 3, if King Jehoram's threat is to be completed, he has to act quickly because there's only so much time. And we know that night is going to follow the first the dusk twilight, and it follows the sunset, obviously. So our question is, which night did the king rise up to investigate the lepers report? Was it night season number 1 over here behind us, or is it going to be night season number 2, according to when the day starts with the sunset? In box number 4, let's just ask the question, if the king rises up in night number 1, this is before the king's anger at Elisha or before any of the story events that we have in 2 Kings chapter 6. And again, you can see that everything is going backwards. So this is where he made the announcement in the day season. He could not have gone back to the night season to rise up, okay? It doesn't work. It's going backwards. Well, let's look at box number 5 and see about night season number 2. If he raises up in night season number 2, there's been a cycle change. It's not the same day anymore, and Elisha is still around. It's not the same day because this sunset here would begin tomorrow on a sunset commencement day. The events move forward, that's all good, but they do not stay on the same day. So we have a big problem here. Did the king honor a sunset day? Well, according to this story, the events in this day start, testimony, do not recognize a sunset day commencement. And I'm here to tell you that neither did King Jehoram. He was not on a sunset day. Well, let's take a look at the lepers and when their day begins. We're saying that they understood the day began in the morning with the morning light. So we're starting this chart with a dawn day. There's your 24 hours all the way to the next dawn day, and then that would be where tomorrow begins. Let's look in box number 1 as a review. You've had the verses already. This is where King Jehoram threatens Elisha's life, approximately this time of the morning, let's just say. And he says, before this day is over, there's not going to be Elisha around anymore. In box number 2, the lepers enter the Syrian camp, and this is after the dusk twilight. They find it's deserted, and they have a feast on food and all the treasures. It is night by the time that they actually get there. But in box number 3, the lepers remember all of the good tidings have to be shared with those in the city. And they said, before the morning light, if they're going to avoid mischief and punishment. So here they are in the night season, and they know they only have till the morning light where they have to make a decision. In box number 4, King Jehoram arises in the night because they went back, remember, to the city. They gave a report to the porter, and the king investigates the report. Oh my goodness, it is true. And this is during the night season, this number 1 night season right here. It is impossible for his day to end at this former sunset. There's no scriptural details at all in this story about that. In box number 5, we have Elisha's prophecy being fulfilled, and it is absolutely on the tomorrow, and it is about the same time on the next day. So the dawn starts tomorrow, and from the first day approximately to where Elisha is on the second day, it's approximately 24 hours. And that's exactly what King Jehoram said, that there was going to be a threat to Elisha before the next day. Well, the record of events shows that the leper's new day arrives at dawn. Everything is in order. Was everybody on the same page? Again, we have our dawn day starting, goes 24 hours, and then this story pops into the next day for just a little bit. And we know that King Jehoram knew that the day did not end at sunset because Elisha was still unharmed 24 hours later. And Elisha had told the king that about this time tomorrow, right there, he said, this time tomorrow, way over here, everything's going to change. Elisha knew that the tomorrow would begin with the morning light ushering in the next day. And sure enough, the lepers found the food and treasures long after twilight, and they knew that the morning light was going to change the cycle. So to avoid for punishment that they might incur, they called for the king that night, and it was still on the same day. It was that night that belonged to that day. In box number 4, Elisha's prophecy was fulfilled on the tomorrow, just as he recognized and just as he had prophesied. Yes, definitely, King Jehoram, the lepers, and Elisha the prophet, they all understood that each new day arrives at dawn. All of them were honoring Yahuwah's covenant with the break of daylight. King Jehoram was on a dawn day. Elisha definitely was on a dawn day according to Moses' instructions, and the lepers were on a dawn day as well. Everyone was starting their day with the break of the morning twilight. So I would just like to call in Elisheba to do this slide for us.
All right. Slide 42, forward progressive movement, and it has an arrow from the top to the bottom, and on the left side it says dig. going down. 2 Kings 6:31. King Jehoram determines Elisha is to lose his head this day. 2 Kings 6:32. Elisha knew about this threat before the messenger arrived with the news. 2 Kings 6:33. The king's messenger arrives with a dreadful threat. 2 Kings 7:1. Elisha proclaims, about this time tomorrow, or about 24 hours later, a measure of fine flour will be sold for a shekel and 2 measures of barley for a shekel.
And so what's happening here is that we have a forward progressive movement of all of our verses going forward in order. And this is, we're talking about the day events. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at is what happens after the day. And that will be done by Vivian for our lepers, for the forward progressive movement.
In 2 Kings 7, 3-5, lepers at the city gate decide to search out the Syrian camp. They left at dusk, twilight. 2 Kings 7, 6-7. Also at dusk, twilight, the Syrians fled from the camp, leaving everything behind. 2 Kings 7, 8. Lepers arrived at the empty Syrian camp and began to spoil the goods of the tent, the goods of the tent, food, clothes, silver, and gold during the night. 2 Kings 7, 9, the lepers realized the good tidings of this day will not last if not shared before the morning light. Wow.
So we did the dusk part, and now we're moving on towards the night part for our forward progressive movement with the king.
Okay, forward progressive movement at night. 2 Kings 7:10. The lepers head back to Samaria and call for the porter on that night. 2 Kings 7:11-12. King Joram rises in the night to hear a report that he doubts. 2 Kings 7:13-15. The king sent servants with chariots and horses to investigate. The report is true.
And we have one more in our forward progressive movement. After the night comes the morning, moving forward in 2 Kings 7:16. The Samaritans also went out and they spoiled the tents of the Syrians. Elisha's prophecy for the fine flour and the barley was fulfilled. Remember, the fine flour was selling 1 measure for a shekel, and the barley was it 2 measures for a shekel, if I've got it right. And in 2 Kings 7, verse 17, this was about 24 hours later, and that's stemming from 2 Kings 6:31, is where the gatekeeper is trampled and he dies, fulfilling Elisha's prophecy. So what we have here is we've gone through again and done another review that all of the events in the scriptures go forward in order with that forward progressive movement, and so do the events of the day, from day to dusk, the evening dusk, to night, and then to morning. Okay, we'll go back to the lepers as we start to finish up our review.
Some of the facts for the lepers. The lepers found bread in their time. Times were tough. The city was under siege. People thought they were safe, locked behind walls, but they were starving. The lepers were considered unclean and tossed outside the city. The lepers had no choice but to go and look for food or die. When they looked, food was provided. The unclean lepers were the ones that brought the good report of free food for those starving inside the walls of the city. That day, the people were thankful for the lepers. Lepers lesson, if you get, you give.
That's right. So let's go back to Becky as she helps us to finalize some of these review slides.
So how does this testimony relate to us? We're a bunch of lepers, all of us. No, I'm teasing. But I do love this part of the teaching, because Yahuwah's children will find bread at the end times, and that's what we're learning about with these lepers. First of all, in the end times, we will have tough times as well. We may be under siege in a spiritual way, and I guarantee you, all of us with this calendar thing have probably already felt a little bit of that. Number two, Christians feel like they're safe. And not just Christians, but a lot of anybody in a lot of traditions. And they feel safe behind the walls of church, but many of them are starving. Many of us were starving. That's why we left. Thirdly, Bible students that are finding newly discovered truths, we're often considered unclean, right? And shunned by fellow church members. Remember when you went to your Sunday church and said, hey guys, the fourth commandment's really talking about Shabbat. The fourth, these dear ones have no choice but to go and search for living bread, or they're going to die spiritually. And I relate to that completely, and I'm sure most of you guys have one way or another in your journey. Number five, when they search, Yahuwah provides them with the best bread. Right? Number six, although labeled as unclean, they attempt to share their treasured food with starving souls in the church. And I'm sure we all have a story about trying to share a little nugget here and there and having the reactions that we get. And number seven, unlike the story of the lepers, many in the churches and fellowships are not thankful for the living bread of the so-called unclean. So we will be subjected to a leper experience. And if you haven't, and if you don't, you're probably not doing it right in this walk. So let's get a little bit of counsel from Ephesians 5:11 and verse 11 and 13. And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. All things that are reproved are made manifest by the light, for whatsoever does light make manifest is light. So what does it mean to reprove others? Oh, and I'm sorry, this is concerning would honoring sunset, would this be considered a fellowship with the darkness? And I believe so, especially with all the light that we get in New Testament readings. So counsel, let's look at 1 Thessalonians 5 and get a little counsel from there. But one of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, but ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. Ye are all the children of the light and the children of the day. See, we're not of the night nor of the darkness. Our lesson, if you learn it, teach it. So how easy is it to share what you have learned? Sometimes easier than others. Doesn't mean people want you to share it, though. But if we share gently, like Yahushua did, and we have to remember that everyone has a choice. So share what you have found, but allow the Ruach to convict. However, do remember, when defending what one considers to be sound biblical principles that are considered as fundamental articles of faith, It is important to use sound biblical arguments that will endure the highest scrutiny. Would the worship statute qualify as a fundamental article of faith in these last days? Does that link to following our master completely according to his covenant of the day? I would say yes, absolutely. We're going to get the highest words of recommendation in 1 Peter 3:15 and Colossians 4 verse 6. 1 Peter says, but sanctify Yahuwah in your hearts and be ready always, always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. And that was a big lesson I've been learning with this calendar journey. Colossians 4:6 says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man.
I like that, Becky. And I'd also like to just reiterate on 1 Peter 3:15 that when it says be ready to always give an answer to every man that asks you a reason, if you're thinking about calendar, if somebody asks you a question about calendar, we need to be ready to give an answer, not with I think or this is what I was taught, but an answer from the scriptures. And that's what we're trying to teach everybody here, is that there are answers in the scriptures and they are easy to find. We just need to know how to give those ready answers. But our ultimate final goal is to be a peculiar people, just like 1 Peter 2:9 has this to say, but you are a chosen generation. I love this. A royal priesthood and a holy nation. You are a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, light of the day start as well. Isaiah 9:2, the people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. Do you remember that was talking about Yahusha walking in the land of Galilee? In Luke 8:17 and Luke 12:2, we have similar verses, that there will be nothing that is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. And that means for Yah's true covenant calendar, it is not going to remain secret. It has been made manifest. Another interesting quote in Luke 12:2, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, nor hid that shall not be known. So we know that his truths for the end times are all going to be exposed. There is a mandate for Yah's peculiar people in 2 Timothy chapter 2. And the things that you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Consider what I say, and may Yahuwah give you understanding in all things, and that includes covenant count. Be diligent to present yourself approved to Yahuwah, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, and remember, giving an answer to everybody as they ask. And a servant of Yahuwah must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach and be patient. Remember to be sharing gently. In humility, correcting those who are in opposition, and I would say with scripture, if Yahuwah perhaps will grant them repentance so that they may know the truth. Yes, Yahweh does have a peculiar people, and he says that they will be kings and priests forever in his highest Melchizedek priesthood. And that's what covenant calendar is all about. It is after the order of Melchizedek and his perfect calendar count. We're starting to use calendar count, covenant count. Anyway, that's the end of our presentation today. And if you have any questions or you need extra help, just send us an email to either Timothy or myself, and we would be happy to help you if we can. And we'll just leave some time for questions and answers or discussion. Thank you, everybody. That's it. That's all she wrote.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody who participated, all the readers. You guys made it real special. It was nice hearing the readers like that. And any questions regarding forward progressive movement? Yeah, Rod, or Becky rather. Comments?
I had a couple of questions. Did we establish that this happened, about 100 years before the sundial event?
I don't know. Did we?
Or was this after?
Yes. We said, didn't we say 897? And the sundial was around 700, so about 200 years before the sundial event.
Okay. And then because I have a theory. I think this whole sunset thing really came out because of some of the studies I was doing. I think this all came out of that Babylonian exile or captivity. The second question that we had, is there some kind of a Torah statute that puts out some precedent of why those lepers knew that once the second day or the day cycle restarted, that if they didn't tell the porters and the king prior to the day that they found it, that there was going to be that mischief that happens? Is there something that relates in Torah that, if you find something, you have that day to turn it in or what have you? I mean, have you guys found any correlation with that?
I'll go ahead and answer, and Tim, if you have an answer, you go ahead and open your mic as soon as I'm done. Exodus 12, where we have the Passover story, we have the Passover lamb is to be eaten all night. You could handle that Passover lamb and eat it all night. But before the morning light came, the Passover lamb, if there was any leftovers, had to be burned before the morning light. That's what I can think of right off the start. So that is telling you right there that the morning light is changing the day. That's where the cycle changes, is at the first light of day. Tim, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, there was other sacrifices that had to be eaten during the same day or the same 24 hours. And some of those sacrifices were done after the sun had set. They were to be done in the twilight. And that's just another proof of the dawn start of the day. And if